They thought the nightmare had ended when news of Malcolm Jamal Warner's sudden and tragic drowning in Costa Rica shook Hollywood to its core, but what unfolded after his death eclipsed every headline, every tear, every whispered rumor. Because this was not just another celebrity scandal or a fleeting tabloid story. It was the unraveling of an entire hidden life. A revelation that tore through Hollywood's glossy facade and left millions of fans, friends, and family members gasping for air as if they too had been pulled under the same dark waters that claimed him. And it began with a single trembling confession from Tracee Ellis Ross, a confession she had buried for over a decade, carrying it like a heavy stone pressed against her chest until the silence became unbearable, because in a single moment she revealed to the world that she had been secretly married to Malcolm for 10 years, 10 years of vows exchanged in the shadows, anniversaries whispered behind closed doors, love written in invisible ink so the world would never see it. But that was only the first cut, because along with her confession, she posted a photograph that instantly stopped hearts. A teenage girl whose eyes mirrored Malcolm's, whose smile carried his warmth, whose presence felt like the ghost of a man gone too soon. And beneath that photo, a stamped DNA report, undeniable proof that Malcolm Jamal Warner had a daughter the world never knew existed. A daughter born of love and secrecy. A daughter hidden not because she was a shame, but because she was the most fragile truth in a world built on exploitation and exposure. And Tracee's caption struck harder than any headline, any breaking news alert, because it wasn't crafted by publicists or polished for sympathy. It was raw, aching, and cut straight to the bone. You didn't just take my husband, you tried to erase my family, meet our daughter. Within minutes, the internet imploded. Timelines drowned in tears. Hashtags erupted across continents, and the world shifted as the conversation left money, fame, and insurance battles behind, and instead focused on something purer, more haunting: blood, legacy, truth. Fans began stitching together timelines, digging through old interviews, comparing photos of Malcolm with the teenage girl, pulling side-by-side images that went viral within hours because the resemblance was too sharp to deny, the DNA report too precise to dismiss, and yet the skeptics sharpened their knives, pointing to the timing of Tracee's revelation. Mere days after reports confirmed that Malcolm's first wife had already collected a staggering $200 million life insurance payout, money meant to secure his legacy but now shadowed by the possibility of legal chaos if Tracee and her daughter were recognized by the courts. Supporters hailed her as a silenced widow, finally breaking free from the chains of erasure, a mother protecting her daughter's rightful place in the story of a man she loved, while critics called her opportunistic, manipulative, and calculated, accusing her of using grief as a currency and timing her bombshell to shake the foundations of Malcolm's estate. But just as the internet split into believers and skeptics, another voice shattered the storm with words that carried more weight than hashtags. Malcolm's mother, who had stayed quiet through the chaos of her son's death, but could remain silent no longer. Because to her, Tracee's revelation was not just about a secret marriage or a hidden daughter. It was the missing puzzle piece that made her worst fears ring true. In private conversations that leaked through friends and insiders, she was heard saying, "This changes everything. My son didn't just drown, he was silenced." With those words, the tragedy twisted darker. Because if a child could be hidden for over a decade, then what else had been buried? What truths about Malcolm's final days in Costa Rica had been scrubbed clean? And suddenly, whispers of foul play, financial motives, and powerful enemies circled back with new ferocity. The official story had always been that Malcolm drowned, but the details never sat right, the inconsistencies too heavy to ignore. And now, with a secret daughter in the equation, the stakes of his death looked less like tragedy and more like orchestration. Legal experts warned of chaos as Tracee's role transformed from grieving confidant to recognized widow and mother of Malcolm's heir. Her daughter standing as a potential legal force that could freeze the $200 million payout, unravel settlements, and ignite one of the fiercest courtroom battles Hollywood had ever seen. A fight not just for money, but for identity, recognition, and the rewriting of history. And while social media dissected every word, every document, every photograph, The heart of the story pulsed around the girl herself, a teenager thrust unwillingly into the glare of global scandal, her face plastered across every screen. The story did not end with the gavel, nor did it fade with the headlines that declared closure, because in truth there was no closure, only wounds ripped wider and questions multiplying in the silence. And while Carmelo Anoni's parents were led away in chains and the mansion they built on the bones of lies sat abandoned, boarded up and turned into a grotesque tourist attraction, the parallel storm surrounding Malcolm Jamal Warner's death only grew darker because now the courts, the lawyers and the media were all preparing for a war unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. A battle over not just inheritance, but over the truth itself. And in the eye of this storm stood Tracee Ellis Ross, once admired as an actress and fashion icon, but now recast as both widow and warrior. A woman painted by tabloids as opportunist, yet praised by millions as mother and truth-bearer. And by her side stood the teenage girl who had been thrust unwillingly into a global spotlight. Her life now dissected like evidence. Her face splashed across front pages. Her silence the most haunting testimony of all. Malcolm's mother, meanwhile, refused to let go of the thread she had pulled, insisting that her son's drowning was no accident, but a silencing. A removal of a man who had become too dangerous, too knowledgeable, and perhaps too determined to protect the secret family he had hidden away for so long. And whispers spread that Malcolm had been in the process of drafting new legal documents that might have redirected his fortune away from his first wife and toward Tracee and their daughter, documents that mysteriously vanished in the aftermath of his death. Insiders close to Malcolm's circle began leaking fragments, emails referencing changing beneficiaries, private conversations about protecting his girls, cryptic notes found in his journal where he scrawled, "They can't erase us if the papers are signed," all of which painted a chilling portrait of a man who knew forces were working against him and who died before he could complete his final act of defiance. The timing, the money, the insurance payout, all of it began to look less like coincidence and more like motive. And legal analysts warned that if Tracee's marriage certificate and DNA report held up under scrutiny, the $200 million payout to Malcolm's first wife could be frozen, challenged, and possibly overturned, sparking one of the costliest and most scandalous inheritance battles in modern celebrity history. Court filings were prepared, lawyers sharpened their strategies, and the media prepared to turn the trial into a spectacle, with every tear, every gasp, every piece of testimony broadcast in real time to a world unable to look away. Hashtags erupted daily. Cho Justice for Malcolm, Shauk Trace's Truth, Cho Hidden Heir, while conspiracy boards filled with photographs of Malcolm's last days in Costa Rica, maps of the resort where he drowned, and red-circled images of men in the background of paparazzi shots, strangers now cast as potential assassins in the fevered imagination of the internet. And as this battle swelled, Carmelo Anoni sat in his apartment in a silence so heavy it nearly swallowed him, his career in tatters, his endorsements fleeing, his name forever tied not to triumph, but to the fraud and betrayal of his parents. And yet he could not escape the pull of Malcolm's story, because the two scandals bled into one another in the public consciousness. Two legacies corrupted by betrayal, two families destroyed by secrets, two men trapped in tragedies not of their making. Late at night, sources say Carmelo watched Tracee's tearful posts, replayed her trembling voice as she whispered, "You didn't just take my husband. You tried to erase my family." And in her grief he saw his own reflection, a man betrayed not by strangers, but by the people he trusted most. And then came the leak that shook both stories together, the release of a single, grainy video clip, allegedly from a hidden phone in Costa Rica, showing Malcolm arguing with an unidentified man just hours before his death, his voice tense, his words chilling. "If anything happens to me, make sure they know about my daughter." The clip, though unverified, spread like wildfire, reigniting suspicions, bolstering Tracee's claims, and leaving the world gasping as the pieces of Malcolm's hidden life and suspicious death snapped into sharper, darker focus. In that moment, it was no longer just about money, no longer just about insurance or inheritance. It was about legacy, about blood, about the lengths to which powerful people will go to bury the truth. and the world realized that neither Carmelo nor Tracy nor Malcolm's daughter would ever escape the shadow of betrayal that had consumed their lives. Courts prepared for battle, lawyers prepared for blood, and fans prepared for heartbreak, because this was no longer just scandal, it was saga. And no matter how the verdicts fell, nothing, no mansion, no fortune, no fame, could ever